Yes, right.
Yeah, it sounds like an advertising scheme from the 40s.
It does, doesn't it? Priest for every question. Father Hugh Barber. 888-318-7884 is the number. You don't have to be Catholic to call. And you can ask if you have a theological question. You can ask if you have a family or prayer question. Maybe something to do with liturgy or your own liturgical life, given this very strange year. 888-318-7884.
Or your spiritual life in general. Prayer. Right.
Indeed. 888-318-7884. Father is the former prior of a long time. I mean, I don't want to make it seem like you're an old man, but a long time.
It's prior for 22 years.
22 years was prior of
St. Michael's Abbey.
St. Michael's Abbey. What do you learn in 22 years? You just learn that all the men in your order are saintly. Is that right? Is that what you learned? They're just all...
Well, I was generally edified.
Oh, that's
shall I
good
say?
to know.
I was not discouraged by my contact with my confreres.
Yeah, very good.
As St. Augustine says, I think well of my brethren,
Yeah.
even if some of them are not perfect. But I mean, no religious community is perfect. But
Yeah.
I was generally edified.
I think I might have told you this before, but I asked Abbot Claude before he died. You know Abbot Claude?
Yes,
the
of course, I
Benedictine
knew him well. Yeah.
I said, "What's the hardest part of communal life?" Did you know what he answered? Community.
Community. Yeah, there you go. No, it is itself a form of asceticism, but that's inevitable even with the most perfect people. In fact, especially with the most perfect people, they can be a pain.
Right, I know.
And not even realize it.
888-318-7884, the number. Okay, now let me just ask you one more question about St. Michael's Abbey, then we'll go to the phones. 888-318-7884 again is the number. Will you have a Christmas ham?
We will have. I am practically certain that there will be a ham at Christmas. Mm-hmm. There will also be a turkey, and we also have because our first provisor in charge of the kitchen among the American generation was raised by Irish English parents, and so it took on an Englishy thing. So we have the Christmas pudding.
Oh, you do?
That they make early and steam and hang and age it, and then it comes in. The lights are turned off, and they light it, with the holly in it and all that stuff.
Oh,
and so it's kind of fun. I mean, and it's
you don't get the little crackers, do you?
Yeah, we have crackers too,
you
so we
do?
get to do that. So we can put on the little paper hats and tell riddles.
The American to the American child listening, this is one of the great advantages that British children have. They get to have crackers, and crackers is not like eating crackers. It's the little things that you pull them and they snap.
It's a tiny firecracker inside of a thing, and you take both ends. It's wrapped up like a present, and you pull, and it goes,
that's fun.
And then out of it falls some little gizmo, some little amusing toy, and like a kazoo or something like that, and a riddle on a piece of paper.
I can't believe we haven't stolen this tradition in America.
A paper crown that everyone can wear.
Yeah. The other thing,
nice. You can buy them in stores here.
Oh, can you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
they're
I'm
available.
getting that. I am getting
crackers. It's a good custom to start because then everyone can kind of begin the meal with this sort of zany,
little festive,
nutty
nutty thing. Yeah. The other thing I noticed as a child, even as a child, reading British children's books, they love them some goose for Christmas. They're all eating goose. Have you ever eaten, Eric? Eric's running the board. Have you ever eaten a goose? Oh, you have. Have you ever eaten a goose?
I've had goose for Christmas,
I've
of
never
course.
had a goose. No, but you've had Christmas goose?
Yes, I have.
Is it better than Christmas turkey, or is it just because they got a lot of geese over there?
It's different, but it's. I would say I'd prefer the goose to the turkey, but only because turkey we get already in Thanksgiving. So,
is it true that what's good for the goose is also good for the gander? Is that a real thing? Because I don't know much about geese.
I don't know. I've never comparatively cooked a goose versus a gander, so I don't know. But keep in mind also that in that tradition, that same tradition, for Epiphany, for the 12th night, the celebration for Epiphany, on the 5th or 6th, it's roast pork that you have.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in the English tradition. So that's why you get the boar's head and all that, coming in, the boar's head carol, that they sing in England, and they bring the boar's head.
I wish that I knew
that was for Epiphany.
I got to look that up, the boar's head carol.
It's a nice song. It's a very classic song. But they always had the saying in England and Ireland and Scotland that while you're eating your Christmas dinner, you say, well, the boar that we're going to have or the pig that we're going to have for Epiphany is still grazing in the yard.
You don't have to tell the pig.
No, but their next big feast day is preparing itself.
Yep. All right. Lots of questions for Father. You can ask any question that is appropriate to a priest. I actually think, we Americans, we love our holidays, but I think the British are probably better at Christmas than we are. I think they're probably better at Christmas.
Well, I think our Christmas customs derive from theirs.
Yeah.
The Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens and all
Right.
that, and most of the Christmas music is either.
Bring me a figgy pudding. No American knows what that means. A figgy pudding.
Well,
we don't know what that means.
Well, you can make. Some people have it. I mean, basically that Christmas pudding that I'm talking about is a figgy pudding, but it's old-fashioned medieval desserts that were made with animal fat.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like suet. And then all the spices and sugar and
Why
everything
didn't I
mixed
live
in
in
with
the Middle Ages?
Currants and the nuts and whatnot.
I live in the wrong time.
It's very different, But then it's served with custard. You pour custard over it, liquid custard, which I like better than the cake.
That's why they all died at 37 in the Middle Ages.
Yeah, but they went straight to heaven.
They did. That's true. They went quicker to heaven.
A happy
than we
life
did.
on earth.
That's right. Well, they didn't have Netflix. 888-318-7884, the number. We're going to go to
Let's try to be a little more edifying, all right, now. Talk about food the whole time.
Here's my problem. I just enjoy talking with you.
Oh,
and
well, there you go.
It messes me up. Like I'm supposed to be hosting a radio program. I just enjoy talking with you. Mitch in Wisconsin is first, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Delighted to have you, Mitch. Go ahead with your question for Father.
Hi. So my question deals with whether or not it's okay to read certain heretical works, because I know we used to have the Index of Forbidden Books, and it's generally appropriate for the church to issue guidelines on what people could read in order to keep them safe from heresy. And I asked mostly because I once came across a copy of the Book of Mormon, and I know how ridiculous and just unfactual it really is. But I actually almost enjoyed reading it because I almost thought, it was a cool story. I knew none of it happened, but I started to feel kind of almost guilty after a while, I shouldn't be enjoying this because, it's not from God, it's from the devil. And, so I guess I wanted to know the church's guidance on things like that.
Well, the first starting with the index, it's an interesting question. The church had an index of prohibited books that was in effect as law till 1966, but the then Cardinal Ratzinger in the 90s, before he was Pope, said that it still could provide a moral guide regarding certain works of literature, which is that's mostly literature or scripture, scholarship, or other such things. But the church stopped doing that because, of course, the number of books and publications produced in our culture is so great that it would be impossible to review all of them and to make a judgment and place them on such an index. But the index never meant that everyone was forbidden from reading the books. It just meant that only those who had a particular good reason, by reason of their studies or their position, should read them. But to others to whom the books might pose a danger to their faith, they were not. But there was not an absolute censorship. Those books were still printed, still published, but they were meant to be read only by such persons as had the formation necessary to read them. And I think it's a question of common sense. It's a question of just the occasion of sin. If particular work that you're reading is troubling your faith or distracting you from your prayers or your practice of the faith, then you can avoid it. There's no obligation to read everything that occurs to you. But the fact is, people with the modern media, they're constantly hearing heresies and errors spouted continually, even without reading them. And so what we need is first of all to make sincere acts of faith, renewing our commitment to the true and Catholic faith every day, and then making sure that we're well informed regarding the nature of the faith and the answers to the objections to it. And then at that point we can safely consider the heretical positions. I mean, St. Thomas's Summa wouldn't make any sense if he hadn't read all the heretical positions, because he begins every single article with all the objections, erroneous objections to the sounder teaching. And so he was aware of these things. They weren't those books weren't burned and destroyed in the Middle Ages. They were maintained, but it was only for persons with a certain education. So I would say, yes, we can read heretical works, but we can read them only in view of our being better informed and without any danger to our conscience. And so we can always take advice for that. I think that certain, for example, Opus Dei, I think for their members, they have a list of works that are out where they give recommendations regarding what's appropriate for young children, what's appropriate for teenagers, what's appropriate for young adults, people with a university education, and so on. It's not prohibiting them, but just showing what is better to read at what age. It's kind of like a reading guide. And there might be other things like that available. I doubt very much if Opus Dei has something like that they actually publish it. But it's that sort of thing. And maybe someone should try to do that, someone with prudence.
Okay, Mitch.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank
Sure.
you, Mitch.
God bless.
I appreciate
Peace.
the call. Father Hugh Barber is our guest. It's Ask a Priest this hour. You can call with any question that would be appropriate to a priest. Lines are full at the moment. Well, one's going to open up right now, 888-318-7884. Our store-wide sale is still going on. All kinds of stuff available on sale over at shop.catholic.com. Check it out today, shop.catholic.com.
It's all about the truth. Catholic Answers Live.
Are you a coffee drinker? If so, you can now enjoy a coffee roasted to perfection by the Carmelite monks of Wyoming. Delicious Mystic Monk coffee is roasted and prepared by monks in a hidden cloistered monastery and is available in over 25 varieties. All Mystic Monk coffees are works of perfection and labors of love. For more information on how to purchase Mystic Monk coffee, visit mysticmonkcoffee.com. That's mysticmonkcoffee.com.
EWTN is now on Twitter. Get short, timely messages from EWTN on your computer or cell phone. It's easy to stay up to date on a wide variety of topics. Pro-life news, Vatican announcements, catechesis, apologetics, the latest EWTN programming, and more. You can link to EWTN on Twitter from our homepage or go to twitter.com/EWTN. At work, at home, at school, and on the road. Stay connected to your world with EWTN's Twitter page.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Cy Kellett, your host. Our guest is Father Hugh Barber. And the questions are entirely up to you as far as if you got a question for a priest, we got a priest for you. So you can call 888-318-7884 is the number. By the way, anyone's welcome, whether you're Catholic or not. You want to talk to a priest, go ahead and call. Up first this segment is Eric in Washington, D.C., listening to EWTN on Channel 130, Sirius XM satellite radio. Yeah, go ahead with your question. Oh, are you there with us?
Hello.
Hi, Eric.
Hello,
Hi,
Eric.
Father. Thank you for taking
welcome,
my
sure.
call. I've been to 4 masses now, and my family and I are interested in becoming Catholic for many different reasons. My first wife was Jewish. I'm married again, and we'd like to enter the Catholic faith. And as I think about the process and I think about my first confession, I thought I was a good person until I started taking stock in my life and looking back. And I'm in my 50s, and I've lived a lot. And there are some extremely sensitive, intimate areas that are sinful, that need to be confessed, and I have no idea how to approach that. How detailed are we expected to get? How specific, etc. And then I'm also afraid because it's embarrassing. I'm ashamed, and these are very intimate details of the sexual nature throughout my life, and I just don't know how to go about it. And
Well,
I appreciate this. I was just driving home, and I appreciate this show because I can do this when nobody knows who I am, and I don't have to actually ask these questions of my local priest.
That's great.
Sure.
That's a perfect use of
Perfect.
the show. Hang on. We'll let Father respond, and then I'll let you a follow-up if you have a follow-up.
Sure. First of all, are you baptized already?
I was baptized as a child in like a Church of Christ type thing, but my heart just wasn't there. I did
Okay.
it because my mother wanted me to.
But in any case, you've been baptized. So that would mean that you would be making a confession and entering the Catholic Church. If you've never been baptized, that's a freebie. You just get baptized, and it's the one big freebie in life. But that's why I was trying to find a way for you. But it's not.
No
Since you've been
freebies.
baptized, the sacrament of confession or of penance, of reconciliation, as we call it, is a sacrament for sins committed after baptism. So now, frightened and embarrassed. Well, join the club. We've all been frightened or embarrassed going to confession at some point in our lives. And so that's a very common feeling. Maybe not all the time or most of the time, but it does happen, and particularly when we are ashamed of or just find a hard time verbalizing what we've done. But it's comparatively easy to go to confession, and you have to remember the priests who are confessions, they've heard it all. They really have, and they are not disedified or troubled by what you say, because I can tell you as a priest, the most edifying, the most encouraging thing, the thing that really makes you realize how good people actually are, is when they come and make a good confession with humility and contrition. That is just so inspiring, it's encouraging to the priest. So you can consider that if you make a really sincere and complete confession, then the priest is just going to be more than sympathetic. So we don't need to worry about embarrassment. And as someone once said, when we sin, the devil comes and takes away shame. And when we want to confess it, he comes and he puts it back.
Yeah, get more shame.
So,
right.
And as far as sexual things, that's usually when people don't want to, or have a difficulty confessing. But once it's done, and it's very simple. So I'll give you this consideration. As far as sexual sins goes, you don't have to go into a lot of detail. You don't have to go into the circumstances. I met this girl and and blah, 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 and what we did exactly. You have to say that you committed, that you regularly or habitually over such and such a period of time had relations with a woman, not your wife, or something. I'm just giving an example. I'm not saying that's you, but just something like this. And those relations were not always natural. Sometimes they were not. And that was also somewhat habitual. But just to give the priest a clear idea of how long and how often the sin was committed. And that's all you need to say. You don't have to go into any more detail. The same goes to say if it were not just fornication, but also adultery that was with a married person, or whatever else it might be. Sins that are solitary, sins that are persons of one's own sex, sins that are, through looking at pornography, all these things. We just say it simply, say what you did. You don't have to describe it. And then how often you did it or how many times you did it as best as you can account for. And sometimes if you can't remember the number, if you're in your 50s, it's difficult. You can just say that for, so many years of my life, I habitually did X, Y, or Z. And you'd be surprised how quickly that material can be taken care of. I promise you. And I often, in my dealing with people with making general confessions of their whole life, which you'd be doing, I tell them, I'll help you, and I'll just ask you questions, and you can answer yes or no. And then it makes it easy for you. It's not as embarrassing. And then if I ask you a question about something you would never do, just please don't take it personally. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. So I would say just, it's a keep it simple thing. And so if I think I'm clear enough.
What do you think, Eric? Does that all make sense to you, and is that helpful to you?
It does, and that's a great help. So I didn't realize that there could be a dialogue in that moment. That I thought it was just a kind of a one-way conversation.
Oh no, the priest can. I mean, usually it is kind of in what you confess, what you're going to confess, and then the priest may say something to you about it. But if you would like the priest to help you by questioning you, then go ahead. But you'd want to make sure it's a priest that actually is going to be thorough. Because you don't want to leave the confessional wondering whether you confessed everything you needed to confess. But in any case, if you prepare well, it's not that difficult. I mean, how many sins against chastity are there that we could commit? Not that many, really, in terms of specifically. I mean, it's either with someone whom we're married legitimately, and something we did in marriage that wasn't right, it was against procreation or against justice towards the other person, by adultery or whatever, or it's with someone we're not married to. And those acts could be either natural or unnatural, and then it could be someone we're not married to but is of the same sex, and of course that's already immediately in that category, or it could be by ourselves, or it could be using some means that's an additional aggravation like pornography. But that's about all there is. There's not much else. I mean, you could talk about, like crimes like rape or, that kind of thing. That's also possible. But if you were to confess that, the priest is not obliged to turn you in.
He's obliged not to turn you in.
Right, he can't say anything to anyone about it. But he might question you about what restitution you've made or what you've done to try to, better the situation if it's possible to do that. But in any case, there are permutations, but they're not as many. And the shame that we have in those things, that's those sins, and then of course the sin of abortion, those are the ones that people tend to be afraid and they're kind of have a hard time bringing out. But once they bring them out, it's taken care of, and then after that, the priest will give you absolution, and you'll be relieved, and your burden will be lightened in a way you never imagined possible.
What do you think, Eric?
I think I think this makes it a lot easier for me.
Thank God.
And it gives me
Very
something
good.
to look forward to. Thank you.
Okay.
God bless you,
well, Eric,
brother.
God bless
Thank
you.
you.
I'll pray for you, okay?
Bless you guys.
Sure.
Thank
God
you.
bless.
I'm sure that for many people and beyond Eric, it's good to hear a priest talk about confession because we know what our side of it is, but we don't know what your side of it is and what your experience of it is. But that it's an excellent point that you make. It's not like you invented something new. Like you just say the word.
Every experience is new, but what people are responding to with their embarrassment and shame is their own awareness that, I did that.
Yeah.
I did it a lot.
Right.
And and that kind of thing. So that's what they're. But that's not how our Lord's viewing us. Our Lord is viewing us with great delight and compassion. He came to save sinners, and you only give him joy when you confess those things.
Right. And then it's interesting also, if I just may, to hear Eric talk about how he didn't realize until he started doing an inventory of the self.
Yeah.
It makes you realize how valuable that inventory is. Just to say, what have I done in the, in his case, for my whole life. But even if it's, you go in a monthly confession, you can kind of surprise yourself, like, well, I kind of thought I was doing better, and I.
Or you may be doing, the thing is, examination of conscience is very important.
Yeah.
And it's not to discourage us; it's just to get us to have enough loving sorrow that we will benefit from going to confession.
Yeah.
So it's not just rote.
What a great call! That Eric. I'm sure you helped many people with that call. Let's go to New York City now. New York City. Watching on YouTube is Austin. Austin.
Hey, Austin.
Go ahead with your question.
Hi. First, I want to say the answer you gave me last time for wisdom and perfection, that was great, man. I looked up co-natural knowledge, and I got tons of great information from that.
Thanks be to God.
But my question this time is, what is mystical wisdom? Because I read that there's like a difference between theological wisdom and mystical wisdom.
Mm-hmm. Well, theological wisdom would be, as it sounds, it would be the wisdom which is, again, if it's wisdom as a gift of the Holy Spirit, it's infused. Theological wisdom is not necessarily infused. It's the meditation on the faith, a deep meditation on the faith, for the purposes of expounding it, like the Summa of St. Thomas is theological wisdom. Mm-hmm. Where it's the highest of the sciences, theology, and therefore it's wisdom from the point of view of the branches of knowledge more than any else, because wisdom is always that branch of knowledge which directs all the others. Mm-hmm. And so for us Christians, wisdom is not philosophy, which of course is the love of wisdom, but rather it's theology. And that means the reasoned exposition of the faith using the best sources and all of that. That's theological wisdom. But then mystical wisdom is the infused gift of the Holy Spirit, whereby on account of the intensity of the charity or love of the person, they are able to make certain judgments. That's like the answer I gave you last time, that allows you to judge of things in the light of the highest truths, the divine truths. And that in many people, many souls, may not even be an entirely conscious operation. Mm-hmm. But it's called mystical in this strict sense that the soul is more undergoing the influence of God's charity and spirit than actually being active itself. Mm-hmm. It's a kind of, you might say, a kind of passive wisdom where God gives it to you through the overflowing of his charity. And that gives you insight. And that's connected to theological wisdom, especially in the doctrines of the church.
Thanks, Austin.
Thank you, Austin.
I look forward to your next call. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with more Ask a Priest with Father Hugh Barber on Catholic Answers Live right after this.
We're here for you. Call now. Catholic Answers Live.
Bishop Joseph Strickland of Tyler, Texas, is one of the most courageous leaders in the church, known for his outspoken support of unborn life, Orthodox faith and morals, and reforming Catholic institutions. In his groundbreaking new book, Light and Leaven, he offers a forthright perspective on the state of the church today and calls on the lay faithful to meet its challenges boldly. Touching on topics including parish renewal, the centrality of the Eucharist, the need for prayer and silence in a noisy and distracted age, and the battle between good and evil in the church and world, Bishop Strickland's wise insights and evident love for souls will inspire and edify you. To order your copy of Light and Leaven, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
To many people, even many Christians, purgatory is a fantasy, or worse, a wicked lie invented by the church to make salvation complicated and keep people in fear. But I'm here to tell you that purgatory is fact, not fiction. The Bible supports it, Christians have historically believed in it, and it makes theological sense. In my new book, Purgatory is for Real, I provide the evidence and reasoning to help you understand this controversial doctrine and demonstrate how it's actually a joyful, hopeful reality, not something shadowy and mysterious, but a sign of God's love and mercy. To get your copy of Purgatory is for Real, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Father Hugh Barber, our guest. Got to say thank you to Eric and Francesca, who have come in to do the audio and the video for us. Our own audio. Darren's out because he and Rena are having their fourth child. And it could be right now. I don't know. And Nick's got a medical thing. I don't want to. It's not COVID or anything, but he's had a little medical emergency he's got to deal with. He can talk about it when he comes back if he wants. He's fine. But he just couldn't cut. So Eric, I told Eric he's our Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's our last hope today. You're our only hope, Obi-Wan. Thanks for coming. And Francesca, see Francesca over here? One semester done at Thomas Aquinas College, and she already is shining with mystical wisdom. And I think she's got some theological wisdom.
That's a requirement for entry. What do you mean?
To get into Thomas
Yes,
Aquinas
very
College.
stiff requirements.
Yeah, right. So thank you both. Appreciate the fact that you're here with us to make this possible. Father Hugh Barber also here with us from St. Michael's Abbey up in Orange County, and lots of folks on the line. It's Ask a Priest. You can just call and ask any question that's appropriate of a priest, 888-318-7884. Let's go to Pennsylvania next, Mary, listening on the EWTN live stream. Mary, delighted to have you. Go ahead with your question for Father Hugh Barber.
Delighted to be with you guys.
Well, thank you.
Father, I'm hoping you can answer. Oh, thanks. I'm hoping that you can answer a question that I've asked different people, different times, and I just don't get it. God is good. God is light, truth. And He created everything. So how did the Creator, who is all goodness, not evil or bad or anything, how is it that evil can be in the world? And the answer, so that we can choose Him freely. It just doesn't suit the question in my mind.
So you want to know how evil got into the world, Mary?
Yeah, basically considering the fact that everything before was God and was good.
Right.
So how can something come forth from nothing, and is in total opposition
Yeah, right.
to all before?
Okay, thank you, Mary.
Well, first off, everything that God made, he made good. So nothing he made was evil when he made it. Nothing comes from his hand which is evil. So that's the first thing. So the things he created out of nothing were created good, number one. Number two, the very fact that they're not God, that is, that they're not the supreme and only unique infinite good, but lesser goods, means that there's the possibility in created goods of falling short of perfect goodness, right? Because God's goodness is infinite, but any other good besides himself is capable of falling short, of defect, in other words, of lacking what it's supposed to have in order to be perfectly good. And so God's creation includes in it the possibility, we would say in philosophical terms, metaphysically, the possibility that created beings, as opposed to the increated infinite being, are limited. And if they're limited, they're capable of undergoing certain defects with regard to their own nature. So, if those creatures are, this is the third point, if those creatures are free and intelligent, like angels and men, they can also choose, they're made to choose what is needed in order for them to reach happiness and to be perfect and good. So consequently, they can choose contrary to their true good or their true happiness. I agree with you 100%. It shouldn't be that, so we'd have the freedom to choose him, that kind of thing. I don't like that kind of language. God didn't create us in order to put us to the test. He didn't give us our most noble faculties just in order to see if we would blow it. All right. He gave us our intellect and will so that we could love him and know him. And that's what the Catechism teaches us. So, but still, it remains true that if you don't have a divine intellect or a divine will, which is indefectible and perfect, your intellect and will could suffer some obscurity or some defect. And you could choose a lesser good than the good that you're supposed to choose, and you could suffer ignorance because of those choices that you've made. And so evil enters the world not as a being created by God, but as a defect in a being created by God that was brought about through the defective work of one of his creatures. That is, defective thinking, defective choosing. And that's what we see in the angels that fell. They loved their own perfection so much that they couldn't stand the idea of that God had determined to share it also with lesser creatures like us. And so they revolted against him, and then they turned in envy of our end and got us to fall. And that happens, but it's a defect. It's not a real being. Evil is it's not, good and evil are not yin yang. They're not co-equal. Evil doesn't really exist. It has a defective reality in the sense that you can tell it's there because of the damage the defect does to the free creature who undergoes it. And that's why when our Lord takes upon himself a human nature, it's in order to restore our nature to that perfection, but that has to be done by the work of his grace, the healing grace of the redemption. So God never made any evil, and in the end, when he resolves all of that, you will see that everything that he accomplishes is only and solely something which is good.
Okay, Mary?
Okay, that's one of those things you have to think about.
Without question, yeah.
Right.
We all spend most.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah,
God
that's
bless
a
you.
lifetime
Sure.
thinker right
Absolutely.
there. Thanks, Mary. 888-318-7884, the number. It's Ask a Priest this hour. We go now to Texas. Lisette is listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Lisette, thank you for your call. Go ahead with your question for Father.
Hi, yes, I was calling to ask, is the birth of the beast real? And if so, how is it described?
The mark of the beast?
Yes.
Okay, what's the mark of the beast?
Well, the mark of the beast is described in the Apocalypse, and it is on the hands and the foreheads of the people, so that without it they may not buy or sell. And so it's an instrument of persecution by the powers, the great powers at the last times and the coming of Christ, and an instrument of the reign of the Antichrist. Now, to what extent that's to be interpreted literally as a mark on your hand or on your forehead is or is that highly symbolic language from the literature of the apocalypse, where you use symbolic language in prophecies, maybe referring to people's understanding and their actions through hand and head.
I see.
Referring to sin,
right,
or something like that. But Catholics are free to interpret that in any way which is compatible with the text and with the charity they owe their neighbors. But I don't think that we should be looking for the concrete thing, like, it's going to be 666 placed on your hand and your forehead. Those are symbolic numbers, and Apocalypse itself says that the meaning of it is not entirely clear.
Mm-hmm.
If the Bible itself says it's not clear, then I think we're going to have a hard time, untying that knot. But the fact is, obviously, at the end times, when there is a reign of the Antichrist, and our Catechism teaches us that the spirit of the Antichrist in the end times is present in every age. The Catechism of the Catholic Church says that in every age there are elements of the spirit of Antichrist, and that therefore there is both the spirit of the world, which opposes the work of God and the salvation of the human race and persecutes it, and that gets worse as it gets closer to the time of our Lord's second coming. He says that. But it doesn't rule out that the Antichrist would also be an actual ruling individual. It makes sense from the point of view of the human race that it would be an actual historical figure in addition to a movement. And so, obviously, totalitarian regimes, they always find a way to force people to get in line. And, of course, they try to control them by the material aspects of their lives, so that they, are going to starve or have no work or be disgraced or exiled or something if they don't go along with the program. And so I think the mark of the beast signifies that most of all, whether it ends up being a literal sign or not. And I've heard all kinds of theories, but I'm not going to mention them because I don't want to suggest any of them to anybody as true. But let's just say it'll be evident in the end times that those who the Antichrist wants to draw into deception or control will be beset by visible attempts to force them to do what he wants. And it could also be that they could be things that people can receive rather innocently just because they're under his domination, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're completely under his domination. But anyway, that's...
Lisette, I'm just noticing lots and lots of questions, so we have to go to a quick break and we'll be right back. I hope that that's helpful to you, Lisette. More Ask a Priest right after this with Father Hugh Barber.
Call us now with your question. Hello? On Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
You've heard that St. Paul Street Evangelization supports hundreds of teams of evangelists sharing the good news. But did you know that some of these teams are public prayer stations? Set up a sign on the sidewalk and offer prayer and encouragement to those you encounter. Everyone needs prayer. Try this new method of witnessing to Jesus. Contact St. Paul Street Evangelization to get started at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
EWTN, helping people grow in their love and understanding of God.
I just want to share that 5 years ago, my lovely warrior princess and saint of a wife and I decided to adopt a little girl through foster care. She is the perfect roundout of our family of 3 boys and her. Yes, there are challenges. Very grateful today for all the blessings that he has shown our family.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. And this hour, we've got Father Hugh Barber with us, Ask a Priest hour, and you can ask him anything you want, and a whole bunch of folks on the line about ready to do that. So let's go to Joan in Long Island, New York. Joan in Long Island. Well, hang on. Joan, go ahead with your question.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Yes, thank you. Father, I'm confused. I think it was last Wednesday's gospel, I never noticed this before. Jesus is making miracles. He saved the centurion's slave, and then He raised the widow's son. And then suddenly, John the Baptist, who I think was in prison at this time, he sends his disciples to ask Jesus if he is the one to come, or should we look for another?
Yeah.
Didn't he had already baptized him? Didn't he know, who he was? And
well, there's
I'm
knowing,
confused.
and then there's knowing.
Well, I think that remember, John was called, as the Gospel of the disciple, St. John, says, to bear witness to the light. And so he did that in various ways, and not being able to preach or point to the Lamb of God from prison, he deliberately had them go and inquire directly from Jesus, and that was his way of pointing out the Lamb of God. He sent them. It wasn't that, at least the traditional interpretation is that it wasn't because he himself was in doubt, but he did that so as to instruct them. And that's a traditional teaching. Now, some people might say, well, that sounds a little stretched with the interpretation, but considering what precedes it and what John apparently seems to know or knows very clearly earlier, that seems to be a reasonable interpretation, that he's sending them so that his pointing out of the Lamb of God can be confirmed in his followers, especially in view of his imminent martyrdom.
So he's trying to make sure they do in fact
they
attach
the
themselves
truth,
to the
go and tell
correct.
John, the dead are raised, the sick are.
Right.
So that's giving them the information they need so they have that conviction, and it's related to the dramatic situation of John's imprisonment and martyrdom. And so John's followers were supposed to come over to Jesus.
Yeah.
They were not in competition, and this was what was so amazing, because normally these claimants to be Messiah or whatever, they were in competition with each other. Well, John says, clearly I'm not the Messiah, and there's one coming after me, the latchet of whose sandal I'm not worthy to untie. And so they were working perfectly together. And they were, according to the tradition, from their infancy. They probably were educated together in the desert south of Jericho. They say in Qumran or someplace. They knew each other as children. In the tradition, the Byzantine tradition and whatnot, is very clear about that. But John is in the wilderness until his manifestation, and knew Jesus and kept coming back. Jesus wasn't educated in Qumran, but he would visit John because he knew the family and all that. That's the whole tradition anyway.
Okay.
So, not in scriptures, but the tradition. So they knew each other well, and they knew what they were about. And so it was more in order to complete the whole picture for his disciples, so that they could then more easily follow Jesus after John was gone.
I've never thought of that, Father. To me, it always was John is in a sense suffering that isolation of prison thing. But it makes sense. He wants to pass his disciples off to the correct Messiah. Like, go make sure you. So he sends them.
Right. But he wasn't wavering in his faith or depressed or wondering whether he had been doing the right thing all this time by pointing out Jesus.
Yeah. All right.
That's the typical interpretation nowadays. But that's not the high interpretation of the fathers and the tradition, which is simply that he wasn't doing it for the instruction of his followers.
Okay, John.
I love that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Much.
Sure.
That's terrific.
Great.
Thank
God
you.
bless you. Sure.
I got a bunch of snow on Long Island. I should have asked her about that. Maybe they'll have a white Christmas. Want me to sing? Does anybody want? No? All right. Caesar in Los Angeles. They're not going to have a white Christmas in Los Angeles. Caesar watching on YouTube. Go ahead with your question for Father.
Hello. Hi, Father.
Hello.
So, my question is, has the church today forgotten about the dogma of extra ecclesiam nullus salus? Outside the church, there's no salvation? Because I see today people in the church saying that every religion is correct and it doesn't matter. If they're just a good person, they're going to go to heaven. Has the church forgotten about this?
No. Of course, obviously the Catholic Church cannot forget any of her dogmas. And one of her dogmas is that the church is necessary for salvation, that you can't be saved outside the church. And so consequently, that's even in the New Catechism, there's a whole paragraph on it. It's in Vatican II. It's everywhere. And so indifferentism, that is the error which holds that all religions are more or less equal, is directly contrary to our faith at the very heart, because our faith is a revealed religion, revealed by God as the only true religion, and our evaluation of other religions is in relation to the truth revealed by God himself. So we can't take them as that. There can be interesting comparisons and apologetic considerations, respectful understanding of other people's points of view or religion, but in the end, the Catholic is convinced that we believe in one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, and that this church is the ark of salvation because it's the mystical body of Christ, and it's because Christ is the one who alone who bestows salvation. Union with him is necessary for salvation, and so consequently, that is a dogma of the faith. Now, it may be that there be a disagreement about what the sufficient union with Christ and faith in him is in order to be saved, that is, in order to belong to the church, at least supernaturally or spiritually, and that's another question. That is the question regarding baptism in vow or in desire, as opposed to being baptized simply and in the ordinary and necessary way of being baptized by water. There are other questions related to that, about which there are some errors in the air, but let's just say all Catholics who are Catholics agree that being united to the Church of Christ before one's death is, in a true sense, necessary for salvation. But what that means theologically or how that works out is another question that we could leave for another day, because we've got a lot of people on the line. But no, the Church can't forget any of her dogmas.
Thanks, Caesar. I hope that's helpful to you. You're always welcome to call again if you'd like a follow-up on that. But as Father said, the lines are absolutely full. So let's go to Nebraska. Bernadette, listening on Spirit Catholic Radio. Thanks for waiting, Bernadette. Happy to have you. Go ahead with your question for Father.
I was to confession the other day, and I realized after I left the confessional that the priest did not give me a penance to say. Was that a legitimate confession?
Well, yes, you went and you made an act of contrition and you were absolved, but the penance is an integral part of the sacrament itself. That's why people should be particularly confident of the power of the things they do as a penance, because it's part of the sacrament. It carries with it the power of the sacrament. And so it's more efficacious for atoning for our sins, especially the temporal punishment due to sin, than other things we might do, even though it doesn't seem like much. Like 3 Hail Marys, but still, those are 3 Hail Marys that have a much stronger value. They're integral part of the celebration of the sacrament. So what I would do, Bernadette, is I would, at your next confession, mention that you did not get a penance for your last one and ask for one, okay? Or ask the priest to include in your present confession as the penance the previous one, and mention that you weren't given one, so could you have one as well. And that way you'll be able to perform the acts that would be related to the sacrament itself as you're celebrating it, and that'll be a greater spiritual benefit to you. But in and of itself, no, you're fine. As long as you present yourself to the priest, confess your sins with true contrition, and he absolved you, then it's all valid. But to be integral, it's kind of like receiving communion under both kinds.
Yeah.
You know, you can receive one kind and it's just fine, but there's something nice or complimentary about receiving under both kinds if it's possible or prudent. That is, there are different ways to celebrate sacrament. So I would just say, just ask next time for an additional penance to make up for the fact that you didn't get one for your last confession.
Okay, Bernadette?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
It's
sure,
a good
God
thing
bless.
you got Father, because if it was me, I'd have said commit worse sins, and then you'll definitely get a penance.
You would not have said
I
that.
know I would not have said that, Father. Not even as a joke.
Don't write yourself a bad script. You wouldn't make such an irreverent joke. You should confess that next time.
I probably should. Look, there's a priest right there, Father. I see a priest I could go
Yeah,
to.
and he looks like he's licking his chops to get his hands on you.
I know. Antonio in Oklahoma, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. You are next. Go ahead, Antonio, with your question.
Yeah, I had a question about end times prophecy, but I think he already answered it. So I was going to ask him something else.
Let's check with the committee. Yeah, we took a vote. You can ask a different question. Go ahead, Antonio.
Okay, on confession, can we not just confess our sins to Jesus Christ ourselves?
Yeah, why do we need confession?
Oh, well, our Lord, on the night of his resurrection, he said to his apostles, he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit, whose sins you shall forgive, they are forgiven, whose sins you shall retain, they are retained." he gave them to the power of his Spirit in the resurrection, the power to remit sin. And they can't remit sin unless they're told what the sins are. And it's been the tradition among Christians since the very beginning to confess at least the grave or great sins committed after baptism, always after baptism, before proceeding to receive Holy Communion if one had fallen into a grave sin. And so that tradition has always been there since the very beginning, and we see it clearly. Our Lord's words on the night of Easter make no sense at all if he's giving the apostles power to forgive sin, and yet not also the obvious implication that the sin is to be confessed, because the man absolving it can't absolve it or retain it unless he knows what it is and what the dispositions of the person confessing are. And then there are other reasons simply that our Lord, in instituting the sacrament, instituted something that's related to his mystical body. We do everything as Christians in a Christian community. We worship together, we receive the Eucharist together, and we also repent together. And the minimum of that is to present our sins to a minister of the church to receive his pardon. And that's not only a Roman Catholic thing. Some of the churches of the Protestant Reform maintained confession, private confession, especially the Lutherans, where it was very normal and widespread, and still is technically, like among the Danish and the Swedish Lutherans and whatnot. So it's a universal traditional Christian practice, and so that's why we need it. Basically.
Right. Antonio, I'm going to leave it there just because I really do want to get as many in as I can. Okay. And Daniel in Puerto Rico is waiting. Daniel, thank you so much for your call. Go ahead real quick with your question for Father so he'll have time to answer.
Hey, Father.
Yes, hello.
I have a question regarding a friend of mine who wants to be a makeup artist, a hairstylist, and a nail artist also. Mm-hmm. Is there a teaching, the morality of all these things? I know there's a temptation and vanity, and I want to know what's the morality on these things.
Well, I think that with morality, of course, it's a question of the exercise of virtue in the Christian life, and virtue is found in a mean that is a middle point, relatively speaking, between two extremes. And so you might say a woman with makeup might want to avoid the extreme of slovenliness or inattention to her appearance. That would be one extreme. Therefore, by not observing the conventions of society practiced by virtuous and good people. On the other hand, she would not want to go to an extreme and imitate those women, particularly found in the media, who take this concern for their made-up appearance to an extreme. And so I would say it's certainly moral to help a woman with her makeup. Ask any woman that makes makeup if she had someone to put it on her every day, she'd be very, very happy. And so it's certainly moral to do that. But I would advise the women and the man doing it, in this case, your friend, to maintain the standard of the reasonable and virtuous people they know, and not push exaggerated styles, but rather dignified and beautiful ones that enhance the natural features of the woman and not make her into some kind of someone from another planet.
Daniel, we got to leave it there. Father, we only have about 30 seconds for your blessing. May we have your blessing before Christmas?
Absolutely. Beata Maria Virgine Intelligente cum omnibus sanctis Domini, benedictio Dei omnipotentis Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, descendet super vos et manet semper, et vos ab omni malo defendet, et in omni bono conservet. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Father. Thanks very much.
Welcome, sure.
And it's early, but Merry Christmas to you
Merry
and all
Christmas
of your
when it
fellow
comes,
priests up there,
certainly.
when it comes.
Right.
Yeah, Merry Christmas when it comes. Right back after this. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. It's always so much fun to talk with Father Hugh Barber. You can usually find at least once a week something from Father Hugh on our Focus page as well. If you listen to our podcast, Catholic Answers Focus, you can get it wherever you get good podcasts. You can get it on YouTube. You can get it at our website, CatholicAnswersFocus.com, because more Father Hugh is better than less Father Hugh. This hour, we're going to talk a bit about maintaining mental health and good family relations and all of that during this Christmas season. We try to do this at this time of year for many, many people. The holidays are like pure joy to them. You know, they love putting up the lights. They love the baking. Not for everybody. For some people, there are struggles that come, and even for those who love the holidays, there are struggles that come. And so, if you want to talk about maintaining your mental health, if you want to talk about maintaining good family relations at difficult times, you turn to Dr. Greg Popcak. Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak are the hosts of More to Life, the call-in program mornings on it's 10 a.m. Eastern Time on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. Dr. Popcak is also the founder of Pastoral Solutions Institute, which provides counseling with Catholic theological principles and great scientific principles as well. You can find them at CatholicCounselors.com. Dr. Greg Popcak is also the author of either 20 or 1 million books. I don't know. It's a lot of books. Dr. Greg Popcak.
20 million books.
20 million books.
20 million, yeah, something like that. Feels like it anyway.
Well, thank you for being with us, Dr. Popcak.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
We're always happy when you're here. I want to give out the number first, 888-318-7884. If there are family situations or your own personal situations you'd like to talk about as far as navigating the holidays, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. Dr. Popcak, you've probably got a book for this, right? Which book do people turn to?
Not so much a book for the holidays per se. I mean, I do have sort of books on healthy mental health and family relations. So, God help me, these people are driving me nuts would probably be a good pick for that one.
Which is,
difficult people.
I believe you got the title of that from listening to me at every single Christmas. I don't know how you did it. You bugged my house, but I believe I say that every Christmas.
Yeah, well, no, I didn't get it from that. Actually, I got it from I was going back and forth with the publisher about the title, and we couldn't find a good title, and I was frustrated after a call with them, and I hung up the phone, and I said, God, help me, these people are driving me nuts. I said, that's it!
Well, there's a lot of you in that title. I mean, there's the humor in it, but there's also the fact that you don't dismiss God from the medical process, from the process of good psychological health. You don't dismiss anything else either. I mean, the wisdom of the world, the wisdom of medicine and psychiatry and psychology. But I love the fact that it starts with the word God. That's right. That's right in your wheelhouse.
Yes, it is both an exclamation and a prayer at the same time. Yeah. God help me, these people are driving me nuts. But I mean, we get a lot of that over the holidays, of course. A lot of family conflict, especially this year. Lots of new things to argue about this year, and in particular. But whether it's that or you're not feeling the joy of the holiday. There are good answers and good ways to respond to that.
888-318-7884 is the number. 888-318-7884. My wife and I came to a decision. Well, she came to a decision, and she told me what it was. That there's no judgment on any of our adult children this year if they want to come for Christmas, if they're not comfortable being around people, if they're worried about the virus, if they're not worried, wherever they are, that it's fine with us because it's a tough year. It just seems like, why create stress over it if someone's reacting to it maybe not exactly the way you would react to it?
Well, that is exactly the advice we've been giving out on the radio program. There are so many things that we could argue about. I think this is a year where everybody's tensions are raised, and we all just need to give each other the space that we need to feel safe and to feel cared for. And whatever that means for you and your family, let's just focus on that and maintaining the relationships so that hopefully next year we can do it all the right way. But this year we're going to do what we have to do to get through it.
Right. So if you have a daughter named Sophie, for example, who lives in Los Angeles and doesn't want to come home, it's okay, Sophie. You don't have to come home for
Someday
Christmas.
soon we all will be together if the fates allow.
I like that. I like it.
Until then, we'll have to muddle through somehow. Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Do we have to pay extra for that? Is there a
You know, I'm going to give you 10 seconds for free after that. They're royalties.
That is beautiful. Later, a duet of Little Drummer Boy. Dr. Greg Popchak and I will be doing a duet of Little Drummer Boy.
I'll do the Bing Crosby version.
And I'll do the David Bowie. Perfect. That's perfect.
Peace on earth. Can it be?
888-318-7884, the number at 888-318-7884. What is part of the problem with the holidays for some of us, and part of why we might run into mental health or marital troubles, is just that there's so many expectations built up around it.
Yeah, and one of the things that we're running into a lot with our clients in the practice at this time of year and on the calls into More to Life is the guilt that a lot of people have that they don't feel joyful. They're supposed to feel Christmassy, and they just don't. And you know, the message that I have for all folks who are in that place, whether they're depressed or they're anxious or they're frustrated or feeling anything other than joy, from the Christian perspective, Christmas isn't necessarily about being joyful. I mean, it is a joyful time, and if you are joyful, great. But it's really about celebrating the incarnation, which means that Christ wants to be born into whatever your experience is. And if you're upset, if you're anxious, if you're sad, if you're scared, or whatever it is, the way to celebrate Christmas is to bring Christ into that and to let his love be incarnate in that experience so that he can be in it with you and fill your heart with grace to respond to it in a more graceful way and lead you, hopefully, step by step out of it as well. But it's not about making yourself be something that you're not. It's about letting Christ into whatever you are experiencing and allowing him to consecrate that so that you can experience his grace and peace and healing in the process.
Dr. Greg Popchak is our guest. He and his wife, Lisa, host the very popular show More to Life with Dr. Greg and Lisa Popchak mornings on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. And Dr. Popchak is also the founder of the Pastoral Solutions Institute, which you can find at CatholicCounselors.com. Often we get questions from people about, I can't find a Catholic counselor, I can't find someone who's sympathetic to my faith, and I want to talk these things out with professionals who also understand the faith. That's what CatholicCounselors.com is all about. You can find them there. And I will recommend it, CatholicCounselors.com. But today we've got Dr. Greg to take your questions. If you have questions about maybe there's a difficult family member that you want some help with because you're going to see them over the holidays. Maybe there are issues at home. Maybe you have your own issues with depression or anxiety or upset around the holidays. You are very, very welcome to call 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. We are already at break time. We will take a quick break. Before I send you off to the break, and while you're dialing 888-31-TRUTH, I do want to remind you that we still have a free ebook for you if you want it. Day by Day Advent Apologetics is still up and still free. It's the ebook. It's the free ebook this month at shop.catholic.com. And by free, we mean free. Really, we just give these away each month. We want to give them away to you. You just go to shop.catholic.com, you click the banner, you get the free ebook, this month's book, Day by Day Advent Apologetics.
There's only one Catholic Answers Live.
The Aquinas Writing Advantage program is part of Homeschool Connections' set of online courses for your Catholic homeschool. Homeschool Connections' website is homeschoolconnections.com.
There is tremendous power in prayer because when we acknowledge that we don't have the power, but God does, things then begin to move for our good. Remember Matthew 19:26. But Jesus looked at them and said to them, with men, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. Now that's power.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Our guest, Dr. Greg Popcak, who hosts More to Life with Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak each morning on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network, here to help us manage our expectations, our feelings, our family situations during the holidays. You're welcome to call with your questions, 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. In my family, Dr. Popcak, I have 6 brothers and sisters. We've all gotten together with my parents Christmas Eve, probably the last 25 years. I think probably every Christmas Eve for 25 years. It won't happen this year. I honestly don't know how I'm going to feel about that. I don't know how my kids are going to feel, but like I wouldn't surprise me if feelings come up on Christmas Eve itself. There's a kind of mourning to the whole thing. I mean, how do you deal with that? I imagine many other people, same thing. A long tradition of cousins and nieces and nephews and everybody there, and it just will be zero this year. There's nothing to fill that hole.
Well, yeah, and I think that it's important to not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I think we all kind of want what we always had. There's nothing wrong with that. But when we can't have it, the question needs to be, what can we do? Not focusing so much on what can't we do. So how could we connect with those relatives that we want to see? Can we do the Zoom call or other ways of and how could we make that fun? So for example, you can play games, over Zoom, and you can have those dinners together that way. And people kind of roll their eyes like, well, it's not the same. It's not as good. Well, no, of course it's not.
Right.
But that's not the point. The point is it's still better than not seeing those people. It's still better than not being around them. We had a call to the show a couple of weeks ago, actually, from a woman who she said, I have never seen my 5-month-old grandbaby without having to wear a mask. And I was really looking forward to Christmas and being there and celebrating with the family. And my daughter, she said, who works in healthcare, had said that we will get together, but we're not going to serve food, and we're not going to we're going to all wear masks, and it's going to be socially distanced. And the caller to the show said, so I just wrote back a note that said, I'll take a rain check, and then she said, but as I'm listening to you guys, I'm thinking maybe I did the wrong thing. What do you think? And, we were, we're not going to tell you what to do. But having said that, it's maybe a good thing to take to prayer the possibility that maybe you do want to take the offer that they are giving you with the understanding that that's not the way it's going to be forever.
Right.
And that's not the way any of you want it to be. But it's still, let's not make the enemy, the perfect the enemy of the good. It's better to see, your kids and your grandkids than it is to sit in your house by yourself wishing that you had what you wanted.
Yeah.
And so, instead of having this sort of ideal in our minds of what it should be, let's make happen what can happen, and make it as best as we possibly can, recognizing that no, it's not going to be perfect for anybody. This year isn't anything that anybody wanted.
Yeah.
But when we ask ourselves, what can we do, and what small steps can we take to make it more pleasant, more enjoyable, more connecting, you're going to come out of that experience better off than if you just didn't do anything except sit around pining for what you can't have.
I'm going to go to the phones. The number again is 888-318-7884. Before I go to the phones, I want to just tell you one fear that I have, and that is that some of my brothers and sisters might be happy not to see me this Christmas. I don't. Is that a?
And there is that. Yeah, actually, we were talking about that with somebody earlier today too. So somebody called in saying they were feeling a little guilty, that they were a little relieved not to have to see certain relatives. And was that okay? And well, look, this is a time where you sort of can step back and figure out moving forward, how do we want to make those traditions work for us in the future instead of continuing to go along with what we've always done, even though it's not working. So all of that's good information.
We'll start with Jim in New York, listening to EWTN Channel 130 on Sirius XM satellite radio. Jim, thank you so much for your call. Go ahead with your question for Dr. Greg Popcak.
Well, first of all, thanks for taking the call. I love your station.
Thank you.
The question is, you're welcome. It's in line with what you're talking about. I've run out of fresh ideas where I have 3 daughters with lots of kids, and usually everyone came over, a few stragglers as well, and opening gifts and all that, because we're all in different parts of the country. But it still had a religious component for even the non-believers, the non-Catholics.
Yeah.
Would say their aspirations, would say a small prayer, and maybe even somebody would join in. And it's just depressed me that whole component. And of course, when I say center of attention, I sit at the end of the table. It's at our house. I kind of enjoy giving money to the kids, but also the prayer time was, whether it's disguised as good wish or certainly God comes up a lot. And I liked the aspect of it that people just got along, and I like the goal setting part of it. It's all gone. What ideas that
when you say it's all gone, I mean, so are you guys not getting? Are you not even planning any sort of a virtual get together at all, or what?
No, it seems too complicated. But it's what you said before. You're not holding it against. We just came out today and said, because kids are quarantined. They have young kids that are quarantined in school because somebody got the virus. So they said, let's just forget it. No hard feelings from anybody. Let's just go our separate ways. And that just came down today, and it totally knocked me out because I was still hoping for a mini reunion of sorts. But it's
you mean
all
a mini face-to-face reunion or what? What kind of reunion we're hoping for?
That was going to be a face-to-face. We were going to knock it down to 2 hours, and masks. It's a house on the water, so we get a lot of wind. So we were going to keep the doors open with heat blowing for 2 hours.
So look, I just wanted to. When I said the virtual thing, you said that's too complicated. I understand that sometimes we're not familiar with technology like Zoom and those sort of things. It's so easy to do, and any one of your kids could set it up. And I just really encourage you to just make that plan to get together at least for an hour on that day, and you can have that prayer time. You can set up your laptop and have dinner together. Even we over Thanksgiving, it was Easter for us last Easter. We had a meal with everybody's laptops sitting on the table. Is it the same? Absolutely not. But it's better than not seeing everybody. And again, you can pray together that way. There's nothing wrong with just saying, hey, let's just take a minute to pray together and ask God to help us be together and really get through this all together this year. But I think that it's important to try your best to make something work for you, because it still is. Christmas. And, it says on the board here that you told the screener that, it seems like all the joy and religion has kind of gone out of the holiday. And it just sort of reminded me of a story that's not specifically to do with Christmas, but I was the music director at a parish for quite a number of years, and the pastor and I were good friends, and I was in the habit of checking in with him before Mass just to see if there was anything going on that I needed to be aware of. And I said, Father, is there anything special going on at Mass today? And he decided to have a little fun with me, and he looked at me and said, you mean besides the miracle of transubstantiation? And the reason I'm telling that story is because, when we say that, it seems like all the joy and religion has gone out of the holiday, you mean other than the incarnation of Christ, you mean? It's like, I'm not being, flipped, but I recognize what you're talking about. All the traditions are gone. It's all kind of fallen apart. But don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Next conversation you need to have with the family is, instead of, okay, we can't get together physically, we understand that, can we at least do an hour where we just touch base that day? And maybe, have that prayer time that it's so important. Have that, play a game of some sort with each other. Just to connect and celebrate as a family, because that's what the most important thing is. Bring Christ into what your experience is, not what you want it to be.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm going to have to get somebody with the IT experience to put that together.
Well, you can also just watch a YouTube video. I mean, for Zoom, I think there's a YouTube video you can watch how to set up a Zoom meeting. And there are other apps. I'm not trying to sell Zoom, but now it sounds like I'm doing a commercial. Yeah. But I'm just trying to facilitate. But I hope that does work out for you, Jim, because it's beautiful the way that you testify to that. And I think, as a father, I identify with that. That even the kid who this year and maybe last year struggling with the faith or whatnot, at Christmas there's a kind of connection that can happen, and you just miss all those things that can happen.
I taught my 80-year-old mother how to do it. I guarantee you can learn it.
You taught your 80-year-old mother how to Zoom?
Yeah.
You are a genius, Dr. Popczyk. You are a genius.
I'm patient anyway.
I'm fortunate. I got people that know how to do it for me. But thanks, Jim. Listen, the number's 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. 888-848-7884. Dr. Greg Popcak is our guest, and we're talking about maintaining your mental health and the mental health of the family during the holidays. I mean, we do this each year, and there's not usually COVID disease around or all the upsets around that. So even on a regular year, when we're talking about the holidays, Dr. Popcak, there are people, for example, for whom they may experience a heightened depression or anxiety during the holidays. It doesn't have to have anything to do with the COVID. And you usually you say helpful things to them. Say some helpful things, will you?
Again, to folks who are just dealing with depression or anxiety during the holidays, whether it's because of COVID or any other thing, again, as I said at the very kind of top of the show here, it's not about making yourself feel something that you don't or pretending to be something that you aren't. It's about asking God to come into wherever you are and whatever you're experiencing now. And so, asking, I think, in prayer to say, Lord, I'm not feeling the joy this season. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling depressed. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling discouraged. I'm feeling frustrated. And I just ask you to come into that experience and consecrate it and help me to respond to it in a way that will glorify you, that will help me work for the good of all the people around me, and help me be my best self in the face of it. And you just keep bringing God into the center of that experience and asking Him to be born into that this season with you so that He can give you the grace to ultimately lead you out of it, but for now at least to be with you in it. And the more you can do that, the more you'll be able to experience exactly what Christmas is about, the incarnation, God coming into your life in a deeper way, and perhaps an area that was a little messy that you were trying to keep God out of. But the most important thing is asking Him to be part of that experience with you.
Christopher in Massachusetts listening on 1060 AM. We're delighted to have you. Go ahead, Christopher, with your question for Dr. Popcak.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you letting me on, and Merry Christmas to everybody.
Oh, thank you. Merry Christmas.
Wanted to just ask, it feels like there's a pretty strong push from what I've heard tonight, to not get together. Do you think that reasonable people can make a reasonable decision, a good decision to get together?
Yeah, absolutely. My opinion on this doesn't matter at all. My point is saying that everybody's got a different opinion about it, and rather than fighting about it, it's good to come to whatever accommodation that you can. But if you all want to get together, knock yourselves out.
Very good. I just wanted to make sure people are so influenced by what they hear in the media that I'm listening. I said, my goodness, Catholic radio has been my strength in this to not.
Well, I mean, look, it's important to be prudent and it's important to be charitable. I'm not saying go party in the streets. I'm saying be prudent and use good sense. But that but what I think about whether your family should get together or not is completely irrelevant. Everybody pray about it. Use your head, the good sense that God gave you. Be safe. Be charitable, and then go do your thing. But you don't need my permission.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, I appreciate the call as a corrective in a certain sense because I was stressing this that for people who can't get together. But I'm sure, in California, I think you get arrested if you get together. I'm pretty sure they just come to your house and arrest you. But it's not the same everywhere, and not everybody has. Like in my family, I have two 85-year-old parents with heart disease. We're not getting together. That's just not going to happen. Right. But that should not in no way kind of be seen as normative. People have to decide for themselves what they're doing.
No, and I think and he was appealing to Catholic radio. The thing is there are lots of things in Catholicism that are prudential judgment.
Yeah, right.
Right. You can't find everything in the Catechism that says, okay, the Catechism number 643 says do this. That's not the way it works. It's all about having a prayerful relationship with God and a virtuous relationship with others that allows you to discern what is truly the best thing for you and yours. But it's important that you make that decision in prayer, that it's not a reactive kind of decision. It's not a decision of, you can't tell me what to do, or a decision of, I'm going to do this in fear. It's a decision where you've taken it to prayer. You've really considered the specific needs that your loved ones have around you, and you do what is you truly believe is best for all involved. That is the Catholic way. But you're not going to find a page in the Catechism that tells you how to do everything.
No.
And you can't tune into Catholic radio to tell you exactly what to do everything, cookie cutter either.
I mean, I will tell people what to do. But
well, you know, yeah.
I don't have any authority, though.
I mean, I'm paid to do it, so.
I want to go to Tom. I think, you know what, Tom in Omaha, hang on. I'm going to, because we're running right up against the break, I don't want to, well, you know what, go ahead, Tom. Maybe just give us your question, and we'll do the best we can. Maybe we may have to hold you over. Go ahead, Tom, with your question.
Okay, here's my question. Well, first, Dr. Popcak, I listen to your program. It plays here every morning at about 9. I listen to it every day. It's wonderful. Well, here's my question. The nativity in St. Peter's Square, that, in my opinion, is blasphemous,
Yeah.
or borderline anyway. Do you think this reflects someone who has a sick kind of mind or satanic mind or something? I mean, why on earth would anyone put that horrible thing out when they have a beautiful nativity?
This is great because Tom, now Dr. Popcak gets to meditate on his answer for a minute or so because we got to take a quick break. But thank you. Tom, you can hang on the line. We'll continue the conversation with Dr. Greg Popcak when we get back. 888-318-7884.
Let us help you with your question today on Catholic Answers Live.
If you spend any time on Twitter, Facebook, or mainstream media, you're probably familiar with the litany of slogans that skeptics employ to rescue you from the foolish belief that God exists. The constant onslaught seems to leave people with the idea that they have no alternative but to embrace atheism. How can a Christian respond? In One Less God Than You, John DeRosa breaks down 20 of the most common atheist challenges and shows you how to craft effective answers. Atheism is more aggressive and widespread than ever. Read One Less God Than You and prepare yourself to respond with the joyful truth that God is real. To get your copy of One Less God Than You, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
To many people, even many Christians, purgatory is a fantasy, or worse, a wicked lie invented by the church to make salvation complicated and keep people in fear. But I'm here to tell you that purgatory is fact, not fiction. The Bible supports it, Christians have historically believed in it, and it makes theological sense. In my new book, Purgatory is for Real, I provide the evidence and reasoning to help you understand this controversial doctrine and demonstrate how it's actually a joyful, hopeful reality, not something shadowy and mysterious, but a sign of God's love and mercy. To get your copy of Purgatory is for Real, visit shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Dr. Greg Popcak is our guest, and he does.
I can't say it most days either.
Really? Okay, good. No. I'm glad it's not. I haven't even had any eggnog yet either, so it's not that. Dr. Greg and his wife Lisa do a wonderful show each morning, More to Life, on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. Plays about 9 a.m. in Nebraska. We know that because Tom, our caller, just said that that's when he gets to listen to it. I have to tell you, Greg, before you answer this question about the Nativity in St. Peter's Square, since that Nativity went up, we have not done a single program where someone has not called to ask us about that Nativity. Now, you got a bad Nativity if people spend a week calling about it.
I mean, is this the case of it doesn't matter whether they're saying good or bad things, it just matters that they're talking about you? I don't know. But
I don't think this is actually one of those.
An opportunity to talk about the Nativity? I don't know. No. I mean, so Tom, his point was it's a hideous Nativity, and does that, what kind of a mind would produce that? Is it a satanic mind? Here's the thing. I mean, I agree. It's hideous, and from what I understand from some of the news reports I've read, the Holy Father hasn't said anything about it. But when he spoke about nativities in the area, he kind of directed people to every other nativity except that one. So there's something to be said for damning something with faint praise, but or not saying anything at all. I suppose if you can't say anything nice, right? But here's. I mean, I'm not an art critic and I don't play one on the radio. But here's the thing. Yeah, it's ugly. But in terms of the satanic, no. It's in the tradition of the Italian Principio, which is where you would place actual figures from the town, so you have the mayor and you got the baker and you put them in the nativity, and it's all part of the thing. Well, this was in the late 60s, early 70s when they had the Apollo launch, and they put astronauts in it. I mean, that's what they made it. They made it in the early 70s, and that was their attempt to be relevant. I think it's hideous, but it's not satanic. It's just in bad taste, and it's about 50 years irrelevant. Other than that, I mean, you don't have to like it.
But here, okay. No, you don't, Tom. You don't have to. Thus far, no one who's called has. But this is what I'm getting from your answer, Dr. Popcak, is the Vatican has had this thing since the 1970s, and every year somebody said, no, don't do that one.
No,
until COVID year.
It was actually created by an art school,
okay.
and it was donated by that art school this year.
Yeah.
So somebody made the bad decision to just leave it up, but it's not like the Pope actually said, "I want that nativity." I mean, he's got a lot of other things to do, So
right.
It's a bad nativity. It's ugly. You don't have to like it. Look at something else.
No,
okay.
and one thing, and another thing in the Pope's favor on this, he wrote a beautiful letter on nativity scenes in general last year, and I hope everyone will read. As a matter of fact, if the people who made this decision had read his letter last year, they might have had a little more compassion for the people who come to look at the nativity scene.
Yeah, this was not the year for that nativity.
No.
If there ever was a year.
No, right. If there ever was, this was not that year. I mean, all right, so Tom, we'll just
the caption should be if 2020 was a nativity.
Well, maybe that's not a spaceman. Maybe he's wearing that helmet to keep the COVID out. The guy in the nativity. Yeah, 50 years people had the good sense not to put it out. This year, nobody. Whoever quit last year and kept saying every year, no, we're not putting that out. That was very
like, it's 2020. I don't care, man. Just put whatever you want out.
What do we got in the back? What do we got in the back at the Vatican? Yeah, I know the Vatican has the greatest art in the world, and they're like, you know what? Let's drag this thing out.
Next year, inflatables.
Hey, now. Excuse me for just 1 second. Tim Staples has the inflatables in front of his house, so let's go easy on the inflatable Mary and Jesus.
I'm just saying. Actually, I have one too. I'm just saying. I just don't want to see it. I don't want to see it in St. Peter's Square.
Right. You want to see something. Yeah.
I'm all for it.
888-318-7884 is the number. 888-318-7884. Part of the medicine for the year. I mean, we've got to keep our sense of humor. One of the things that Tom's question kind of. I don't know. I've been having this recurring thought throughout the year 2020, and it's not going away. The sense that all the little courtesies and the little things that we do, the little rituals that we have in our society, all the little habits, these things are actually way more valuable than we give them credit for. Because when they disappear, life seems, people...
empty.
It seems...
Yeah, no, absolutely. People really... Actually, one of the things we talk about in almost every single one of our books is the importance of rituals and routines. And we talk about it so much that people actually make fun of us for it sometimes. I mean, good-naturedly, but, here go the Popchaks again railing about rituals and routines. This is a year where you really see how important those things are. All of a sudden, you're not going to have that casserole at the meal, and you're upset about it. You know,
right.
These little things really do matter. Human beings are creatures, not just of habit, but of ritual and routine, and that's one of the ways that we help find meaning in life. And when you take those things away, it's upsetting. I mean, that's one of the reasons that people are so upset about not being able to go to church the way they want to. I mean, obviously we want to receive the Eucharist and we want to receive those graces, but the fact that all of those spiritual rituals have been taken away from us, they make us feel like we can't cope because that's what we use to cope. That's how we process things and find meaning and reflect on what God's will is for us. And when those tools are taken away from us, it's really traumatizing. And so, we can kind of poo-poo all of that and say, oh, well, it's just but the reality is, when these things are taken away from us, it feels very disturbing, and people are very disturbed this year, and understandably so. And that's why I say, it's important to do what we can instead of just letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, because if you can at least have some of those rituals and some of those routines in your life, it can help you hold on to at least some sense of balance, instead of just chucking it all and sitting in your corner and moping about it, because that really does become depressing, much more than you even think.
Yeah. 888-318-7884 is the number if there's someone in your family who you'd like to talk with Dr. Popcak about, who might be struggling through this year, through this end-of-year period, through this holiday period. You're welcome to call. If that person is yourself, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884, 888-318-7884. We just got through, Dr. Popcak, probably the most divisive political year of my entire life. I mean, yeah. I was only probably 7 during the Nixon years, and it seemed pretty bad at the time, but I think this was worse than that. And now I want to ask you this, because I actually think this is going to be very stressful for a lot of families. Now we have this vaccine, or these various vaccines, and there's questions about the morality of the vaccines, and there's questions about, there are certain theories about government control and all that. And then you go and you say something basic when the family gathers, even if it's on the Zoom call, and like, I'm as soon as the vaccine's available, I'm going to get it. Or another person, maybe I would never get that vaccine, and now we're in a fight. And it just seems like this is another thing that is just going to tear at people. And how does a mature person, particularly a mature Christian person, deal with the fact that, I get it, there's people who have serious moral objections to this. There's other people who come at it a different way. And even we've even seen among the bishops, they don't agree on the morals and ethics of all this. How does the mature Christian navigate such, once again,
I want to start with what you're pointing out here. That so for example, even the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, it came out saying that it was licit to use the vaccine, right, in absence of any other choices that are available to us. So we're not talking about something that is, that is a matter of doctrine, right? This is a matter of what I was talking about before about prudential judgment. Okay, so anytime that there's some issue related to what's called prudential judgment, what that means is that each of us is called to prayerfully reflect on the facts as we are aware of them and make the best decision that we can for both ourselves and the people that we love. And in that, that's not the same thing as saying there are no right answers exactly. It's a matter of saying that it's really up to you to seriously, prayerfully make your decision. So when somebody has a different opinion on these kinds of things, the most important thing you can do is say, tell me a little bit more about why you think that way. Help me understand where you're coming from.
Right.
Because either, I'm going to help them talk through their process, and maybe as they're listening to themselves talk, they're going to hear themselves say something that makes them think, maybe that's not exactly right, But they haven't had a chance to think about it before because nobody actually was interested in listening. They were just interested in preaching at them. Mm-hmm. Or I might learn something, So, for example, today on the radio program, we had a gentleman call in, and the Catholic radio show, right? He was calling in because he was having his boyfriend move in with him, and he was trying to figure out how he should tell his parents on Christmas, how to let them know that, and we took the call knowing it was going to be a risk. But before I said anything to him, I said, look, you're calling into a Catholic radio station. What are you thinking that you're going to hear from me? And I talked through that a little bit, and then I said, well, so look, help me understand, what's your faith background here? Where are you coming at this from? And he said, well, I used to be Catholic, but then, when I was 15 years old, my uncle molested me. Oh. And my parents didn't do anything about it because they said that they were Catholic and that God would forgive him and I had to forgive him too. And in taking the time to step back and listen to this man and hear his story, I learned something a little bit about what his experience was. So I was able to respond to his question. I didn't give him the answer he was looking for, but I was able to give him an answer that would allow him to maybe come back to the church and see that wasn't just the only way to deal with this. And I was able to really learn something about what his experience was that allowed me to kind of be with him in a way that would make sense to me and still feel compassionate to him. And so when we're dealing with these kinds of questions, about the vaccine or any of this other stuff, and somebody's saying something you disagree with or you think you're going to be offended by or that puts you on your heels, it's important to just say, help me understand where you're coming from with this. Let me understand your experience. And then, and if you still don't agree with them, you can say, that's a really interesting perspective. I want to take it to prayer. Thank you for sharing that with me. And then change the subject, because it is a matter of prudential judgment. That is, anyway, not the call that I had earlier today. But you see what I'm trying to say. It's important to understand not just what the person's saying, but what goes into that line of thought.
Dr. Greg Popcak is our guest. Our number is 888-318-7884. Navigating family health, mental health issues during the holidays. Our topic, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. Before we send you off to the break, we have gift certificates at shop.catholic.com. Haven't always had these before. And if you think that would be the right gift for someone this Christmas, you can get them in any amount at shop.catholic.com, including $1 billion. If you want to give a $1 billion, Catholic Answers, what? Someone could do it. There could be shop.catholic.com.
Bringing you the truth. Catholic Answers Live.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
I have never seen women who want to be equal absolutely degrading themselves. And yet the media degrades your nature, your beauty as a woman, your goodness. Let us pray at some point our dear Lord touches their hearts.
For more information on Mother Angelica, visit Religious Catalog at EWTNRC.com.
St. Paul's street evangelization isn't like other evangelism you might have seen on the streets. We don't yell, and we don't force anyone to pay attention to us. Instead, St. Paul's street evangelization is committed to presenting a positive, passionately Catholic presence to a world hungry for truth. For more information, or to start a chapter of your own, go to www.streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com. It's time to do our part.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Our guest is Dr. Greg Popcak. I have to say, one of my favorite guests. I love when Dr. Greg is on because he's always willing to have fun, and he's a very funny, charming person. And then he also dropped the wisdom on you. He will just drop the knowledge on you. I love that. Up next, first caller this segment, Cora in Amarillo, Texas, listening on the magnificent Guadalupe Radio Network. Cora, glad to have your call. What's your question for Dr. Greg Popcak?
Well, I'm in a dilemma, and again, I get teary-eyed about this because I'm 54, and I told my mom the best gift she ever gave me was my faith. And with everything going on, I haven't been able to go to church or take her to church. But our church is now available where you can go to church.
Okay.
And we actually got COVID, but we're blessed. With my mom's 75, no one had to go to the hospital, and we're blessed that everyone's okay. And so I pretty much kept her isolated. I mean, we do things where I know it's safe, like going outside, doing stuff like that. But I feel like I should be able to take her to church because that's the safest place you could be because they're sanitizing and everything, because I miss going to church. That is, I feel so empty.
Are you your mom's caregiver? Do you live with her or she lives with you?
Yeah, no, I live with her. She's dealing with dementia, but she's amazing. But just like he was talking about rituals, and that's our thing. And I feel empty not going, and I feel guilty if I go without her. But I feel like I should be able to take her because that's the safest place to be. So that's my thing.
So I'm not clear what your question is, Cora.
Is it okay if I take... I know y'all can't tell me it's okay to take her to church, but that's my guilt because I feel bad if I go to church and she's not going to church. I mean, we watch it on TV, but it's like...
I mean, is she able to go?
She is. I mean, she's a little fighter.
Well, you mentioned that she has dementia, so I wasn't sure how capable she was, and so, again, this is one of those things that falls into that area of prudential judgment, and although I can't tell you what to do, I can tell you how to arrive at your decision, right? So what I want you to do is not base this on feelings, okay? Because it's not about what we feel. This is about what God is asking us to do. So how do we discern that? It's a matter of taking it to prayer and saying, okay, Lord, help me to understand what your will is in this situation. On the one hand, my mom gave me my faith, and I just miss you so much, and I want to bring her to you, and I feel like I ought to be able to do that. On the other hand, I really don't want to make her sick in any way and take any unnecessary risks. So, Lord, just come into my heart and enlighten the eyes of my heart and help me to know what it is that you want me to do. Now, you're not necessarily, we all want the big neon sign to fall out of the sky in response to that prayer, but you're not probably going to get that. You're going to need to be praying about it every day, for as long as it takes. But what happens, St. Ignatius of Loyola talks about 3 different ways that God reveals his will to us. The first way is that kind of getting whapped upside the head, kind of falling off the horse, St. Paul sort of thing. That doesn't happen too often. The second way, though, is what he calls the enlightened, I forget what he calls it exactly, but it's basically the idea of like the sun coming up over the horizon, right? You sort of see there's a kind of light over the hillside there, and then as you reflect on it, more and more the light sort of shines, and suddenly you just know what to do. And so there's that kind of revelation. And then there's the third kind of revelation, which is that as I pray about it and I reflect on it, God enlightens my reason, and he enables me to make a good decision just based on the good brain that he gave me. Those are 3 perfectly legitimate ways of discerning something, but it all starts with bringing those questions to God in prayer and saying, Lord, what do you want me to do about this? How can I respond to this in a way that will glorify you, that will work for my mom's good, and help me be the best person that you want me to be? And I will do whatever it is that you want me to do. But you can't base it on what your feelings are telling you. You got to base it on what that receptive spirit that you have in response to God's grace is telling you to do. And if you walk that process, I can promise you that you'll figure it out.
Cora, thank you so much for the call, and God bless you as you care for your mom. Again, 2020, tough year to do it. Tough year to do anything, but caring with a parent with dementia, God bless you as you work that out. 888-318-7884 is our number, 888-318-7884.
I would, it's just an aside, if you don't mind, she didn't ask this, but for anybody else who's out there listening, even if we didn't have the dispensation because of the pandemic, and as I understand it, most places still have that dispensation, but even if we didn't, both people who are too ill to go and their caregivers are dispensed from that obligation for a Sunday or holy days as well. So if you're listening and you're in that position that Cora is, and you are caring for someone who can't go to Mass, you are also dispensed from that obligation.
It's funny because I know people who just on their own, they're afraid to go to Mass and they have the dispensation, so they don't go, but they feel guilty. Like I've had people tell me that, but I feel guilty that I'm not going. I don't know what you do with that.
Well, I think there are a lot of different feelings that are mixed up in that. Part of it is that missing that ritual, and we feel like that's what helps us have a sense of balance. And, we've been told all our lives if we don't go to church, we should feel bad about it. So now all of a sudden I'm not going to church, and, shouldn't I feel bad about it? You know what I mean? We kind of motivate ourselves that way. We say, if I didn't feel bad about it, then that would be a bad thing, right? I should be. And it's not about feelings, right? It's about doing what we can to serve God, So I think even, people can make their own choice about this, but I think it's admirable, for example, to watch Mass if you can, at the very least, as a way of maintaining that connection. I think it's good to be able to have some kind of praise and worship at home, whatever you're comfortable with, or some kind of devotion at home. But it's not good to make yourself feel bad. That doesn't do anything. In fact, that wears you down spiritually and actually pulls you away from the things you could do to be close to God, and that's exactly what Satan wants. So, I don't think ladling on guilt and feeling bad about it when you've been dispensed from it and you're doing what you can to connect with God, that doesn't help anything. So, just an encouragement there. Focus on what you can do, not what you're not doing.
Dr. Greg Popcak is our guest. Our number is 888-318-7884. Dr. Greg, you probably know this, but our assistant producer is actually very coincidentally named Assistant Producer Marie. She's a person who she's married now. She got married this summer.
My christened name.
But yeah, she was christened Assistant Producer
Very
Marie.
prescient of your mom and dad.
Yes,
But,
exactly.
Marie's a person with a lot of problems. So, no, but she does have a question for you. Go ahead, Marie.
No, Dr. Popcak, I have some family that is being more cautious about COVID because they're higher risk, and so they're keeping to themselves this holiday. And while we are planning to spend time with them over FaceTime, it's definitely a harder and more difficult holiday than in years past. And I guess my question is, what are some helpful things to say especially when family members are very lonely and sad? I've been saying things like, I hope this ends soon and I hope we can see each other soon. And obviously we wish we were with you, but are there some other things that could be helpful to say that would maybe sort of ease some of the loneliness and, boost their spirits?
I think we have to sometimes get comfortable with letting people feel what they're feeling, and that's really hard to do. But if somebody's feeling badly, I don't mean let them sit in it, but I do mean to kind of be with them in it. To accept that this is a sad thing, and sad things are sad, and it's okay to be sad about that. And I love you, and you can tell me about how sad you are, and and I'll be sad with you. But to not work so hard at necessarily trying to take it away.
Okay.
Because I think that sometimes what can happen is all they hear is you don't get it, right? And then that actually makes them sadder, right? So if you're able to, if you kind of pray through it, and if you can, you get inspired in the moment to say something, and that kind of clicks for them, great.
Yeah.
But anytime we whether it's really anybody, a child, a friend, relative, parent, whatever, we try to kind of be their cheerleader. What really happens is they all they hear is that we don't get it. And in fact, there's interesting research that kind of shows that sometimes positive self-talk is actually the worst thing you can do.
Really?
Because it was funny, because you're in the front of your head, you're saying, gosh darn it, I'm smart enough, and I'm good enough, and people like me. And in the back of your head, you're hearing, yeah, right. And what do you actually listen to? You listen to the yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah.
And when people try to cheer you up and say, things to kind of lift your spirits, a lot of times what you just hear is, I'm so alone, nobody really gets it. Right, but if you can come alongside of them and say, what, this does stick, and I am sad too, and this is really awful, and I'm so sorry that you're having such a hard time with this. I'm right there with you, and I can't wait to see you again. That lets them know that you get it, that you're in it together, and they don't feel so alone in it. And that's probably the best and most honest thing you can do sometimes.
Okay, yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
And also, you should know, Dr. Popcak, that Marie has now made it through 6 months of marriage. So it's
congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been
a milestone.
Yeah, it's been a
6
big
months of
gift.
marriage in COVID is like 60 years. So.
Yeah, we've said several times that it feels like we've been married for years rather than months, but it's been really great. Marriage is such a blessing. Actually, Dr. Popcak, somebody recommended one of your books to us when we got married, so that was helpful for us.
Which was the book?
I would rather not say the title on the air. Dr. Popcak knows which one it is.
I'm guessing you're talking about holy sex.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, Marie.
Nothing wrong with
Sorry,
saying
I'm
that title
blushing.
on the air.
Sorry, Marie.
Good
Here.
title to say on the air. That's a great title.
Yeah, no, and it's a helpful book, and some other young married couples that we're friends with also read through it together with their spouses.
Oh, good.
So yeah.
Well, I have
Yeah,
a
thank
slightly
you.
less embarrassing book to recommend to you as well. It's called Just Married. The Catholic Guide to Surviving and Thriving the First 5 Years of Marriage. So you want to check that out.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
She needs you to write a book called "I Work for a Catholic Radio Host and He Never Remembers What I Tell Him to Do." Can you write that book?
Yeah, you know what? That's just hopeless. There's no reason to write a book for that.
Oh, for the first time he's been hopeless. I've never heard Dr. Popcak be hopeless before.
God help me, Psychel is driving me crazy.
Dr. Greg, thanks so much, and Merry Christmas to you. Many blessings to you and Lisa and to your whole family.
Thank you, and to yours as well.
God bless you, and thanks so much. I always feel better when Dr. Popcak's around. Tomorrow we're going to do 2 hours of open forum. Trent Horn's going to be here. Jimmy Akin's going to be here. You can ask him anything you want. So we'll see you then, God willing, right here on Catholic Answers Live.